I've listened, I've learned, and I've changed, and the government will change with me. I am determined to do better.
Tony Abbott was fighting to stop the rot.
How long have you got to lift your game?
Well, that's a matter for the backbench.
Once you start leadership challenges, you're not sure where they end up. They create a lot of disquiet, they create a lot of distrust, and obviously they can cause a lot of division as well. I know my front benches. I trust my front benches. I've worked for a long time with all of them. I'm not someone who runs around demanding pledges of loyalty.
Perhaps he should have, because before his very eyes, loyalties were being tested.
Did Malcolm Turnbull or any of his supporters ever try to recruit you?
Oh, look, when you arrive in the parliament, everyone wants to be your friend. I mean, I'd heard these terrible stories about how dreadful politicians were to each other, but I was struck by how friendly everybody was.
Because they all wanted your vote.
Because everyone wanted you on their side. My question is to the Prime Minister.
Angus Taylor was a rookie MP elected at the 2013 landslide.
I don't think there was a lot Tony could have done in hindsight after that initial spill. I mean, I think the truth was that it had its own momentum and it was hard to stop.
I'm just not going to play the Canberra Games.
There were broken promises. There was the difficulty with the 2014 budget. All that was bubbling along. Malcolm Turnbull was in Cabinet. Was he leaking against his own government?
I have no evidence for that, so I don't know.
Were there leaks?
Yes, there were. It was quite a leaky cabinet.
Well, I think when I look back on it now, as soon as you've got leaks coming out of Cabinet, you've got a problem.
The people who are responsible for the leaks have not been identified. And some people would say that the Prime Minister's office was leaking because they wanted to get certain outcomes, right? Now, I don't have any evidence for that either. The Prime Minister's office would say that, you know, Malcolm was leaking or his supporters were leaking, but I don't have any evidence for that. I mean, the problem with this is you never get to the bottom of who leaked what.
We are not Labor, and this Game of Thrones circus, which the Labor Party gave us, is never going to be reproduced by this coalition, by this Liberal National coalition.
Despite Abbott's desperate assurances and hopes, the internal rebellion was festering away.
Everyone knew that Malcolm was ambitious, that he wanted to be Prime Minister. Of course he was going to be looking at what the opportunities were for him to again put himself forward.
Malcolm Turnbull seized his opportunity in September 2015.
There was a very strong focus on what the polling was showing, the results of the various news polls that were coming through. Whilst that is important, it should never have been the overriding concern that it was and that it became.
Just over 2 years into his term as Prime Minister, Abbott had lost 30 consecutive news polls.
Can the Prime Minister nominate a single person sitting behind him who thinks he's the best possible Prime Minister?
Tony and I had a gin and tonic on the Sunday night at the Adelaide Club. I can say that now because I don't need to seek re-election. And he said to me, do you think, you know, there'll be a challenge this week? And I said, no, I don't. I don't think so. I mean, I think people are unhappy, but I don't sense there's any, you know, momentum for a challenge. I was wrong.
A little while ago, I met with the Prime Minister and advised him that I would be challenging him for the leadership of the Liberal Party. And I asked him to arrange or facilitate a meeting of the party room to enable a leadership ballot to be held.
So do you know what I did? I did my job, but I locked my door of my internal office. I thought I've been through enough of these, and I'm sick of them. It's going to be bad.
I have consulted with many colleagues, many Australians, many of our supporters in every walk of life. And this course of action has been urged on me by many people over a long period of time.
And it was over within 24 hours.
This time, Tony Abbott received 44 votes, but Malcolm Turnbull took 54. The people in this room had not only changed the leadership of the Liberal Party, they'd changed the Prime Ministership of the nation.
The King is dead. Long live the King.
What did you think?
Insert expletive here. Devastated. It's not what we were elected to do. It's devastated. I knew it was coming. I knew, but gutted.
I, Malcolm Bligh Turnbull, do swear that I will well and truly serve the people of Australia in the office of Prime Minister.
Was Malcolm Turnbull being treacherous?
If you challenge a leader, obviously you're not being supportive of them.
How are you feeling this morning?
For his part, Malcolm Turnbull feigned surprise at becoming the new Prime Minister.
This is a turn of events I did not expect, I have to tell you, but it's one that I'm privileged to undertake and one that I'm certainly up to.
What is your message to the Australian public?
This is a great time to seize the day. I'm filled with optimism.
Did Malcolm Turnbull destroy the opportunity to have another period of stable coalition government?
No, I don't believe so. He was elected leader. He took that responsibility seriously.
Did a lot of those MPs who supported him know what they were doing? Some of them hadn't been around when he was opposition leader and I was working for him.
That's the personalities, that's the looking back, that's the hindsight. I look back and I remember the positive contribution Malcolm made. He was an idiosyncratic personality. He was mercurial on his good days.
There's some good words.
And he had some bad days. Of course he did. We all do.
And for the man Turnbull deposed, it was a terrible day.
The nature of politics has changed in the past decade. We have more polls and more commentary than ever before. Mostly sour, bitter, character assassination. Poll-driven panic has produced a revolving door prime ministership, which can't be good for our country. And a febrile media culture has developed that rewards treachery.
Was the fatal moment then in that decade the overthrow of Tony Abbott? Did the coalition just need to stick with the leader who'd won the way to government?
No matter what. I think that's absolutely the case. It is, even if he was a dud that got rolled after 3 years, the one promise that you made to the Australian people is we're not going to be like them. And think of this extraordinary statistic, the fact that you've got to wait until Scott Morrison, until you get a Prime Minister after John Howard, that's elected at one election and takes a party to the next election. That is a ridiculous indictment on the political class that we ever got to that stage.
Have these leadership shenanigans meant that the voting public's become more mercurial?
Oh, look, I think that the federal political class has completely let down the Australian people.
There was certainly an element of that, and for those of us who are involved, you know, we bear those scars.
One of the key Team Turnbull conspirators was Queensland Senator James McGrath.
You were described as the chief bedwetter.
I've been called worse, often by members of my own family.
Do you regret backing Turnbull, knifing Tony Abbott?
I do regret backing Malcolm Turnbull, and I feel sorry for Malcolm Turnbull that he fails to understand that the trust that was put in him by the party membership, not just in Queensland, but across Australia, that he failed to understand that trust, and that he has actually returned that trust with his continuing acts of disloyalty to the party, and more importantly, to the members of the party.
We owe a great debt to Tony Abbott. We thank him for his leadership. We thank him for his service. He is a great Australian.